The mansion was completely silent as Alexander Royce, the youngest self-made billionaire in the country, returned from a 12-hour business war that had drained every drop of energy from him, and all he wanted was to walk into his bedroom, collapse on the bed, and forget the world. Yet something felt off the moment he stepped onto the polished marble hallway leading to the master suite, for the lights flickered softly, thing they never did in his perfectly maintained home, and a faint, rustling sound whispered from behind the tall carved bedroom door, a sound so out of place that it forced him to pause, tighten his grip on the doorknob, inhale deeply, and push the door open only to freeze in complete disbelief as he found a small girl, no more than 8 or 9 years old, sitting cross-legged, on the floor surrounded by stacks of money pulled straight from his private safe, the safe only he could access. She wasn't crying, wasn't panicking, wasn't even surprised to see him. She simply looked up with calm, wide, intelligent eyes that carried both innocence and unimaginable pain, and whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't know where else to go," and something in her voice, something trembling yet brave, made Alexander's mind spin because he should have called security. He should have demanded answers. He should have been furious, but instead he found himself stepping inside slowly as though afraid to scare her, asking gently who she was and how she got past the mansion's top-tier protection systems, and the girl swallowed hard, clutched a photograph to her chest, and said the words that nearly made Alexander's heart stop. "My name is Liana, and my mother told me that if anything ever happened to her, I should find you. Because you're the only good man she ever knew." Words that stabbed through him, because he hadn't heard from Liana's mother in nearly 10 years, yet the memory of the woman he once loved, deeply, painfully, flooded him like a storm, and before he could process any of it, the girl continued in a small, breaking voice, She's gone, sir. They took everything from us." And Alexander's chest tightened as rage, confusion, and protectiveness collided inside him, knowing instantly that the life he lived, the cold, lonely empire built on power and precision, was about to change forever. And as Liana's tiny fingers passed him the crumpled photograph of her mother with a message scrawled on the back, "If you're reading this, I failed to escape. Please protect our daughter." Alexander felt his world tilt, his past roar back to life, and his future forcefully rewritten by the little girl sitting in his bedroom, surrounded by money she never intended to steal, but only used to prove her desperation. And he knew in that moment that whatever darkness had taken her mother was now coming for this child, and that he, Alexander Royce, with all his wealth, power, and influence, would burn down the world before he let anything happen to her. The chapter ends with him kneeling slowly, meeting her eyes, and saying with a quiet intensity that shook even him, "You're safe now, Liana. I'm not letting anyone hurt you. Ever again." And the girl finally burst into tears as the billionaire gently pulled her into his arms, feeling a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. From that moment on, Alexander's mansion transformed, from a sterile palace of wealth into a guarded sanctuary with armed security, stationed discreetly at every corner. But even with all his power, he couldn't stop the gnawing fear in his chest as he watched little Liana wander the halls like a ghost carrying a burden far too heavy for her age. And day after day she slowly opened up, revealing pieces of the nightmare she had survived. The men who chased her mother, the nights they moved from shelter to shelter, the coded messages, the burned documents, the whispers of a secret her mother uncovered within Alexander's own company years ago, a secret the wrong people wanted buried forever. And as Alex dug into his surveillance archives, corporate files, and private networks, he discovered that Liana's mother had been targeted because she uncovered a billion-dollar laundering operation run by his most trusted partner, a man who had manipulated Alex for years, feeding him curated numbers and false loyalty, all while using Alex's empire as a shield for criminal empires, far darker and more violent than he ever imagined. And when Alex realized that Liana's mother had died protecting both her daughter and him, something inside him snapped, unleashing a version of himself he had buried long ago, the relentless, ruthless strategist capable of dismantling entire corporations overnight. He confronted his partner in a dramatic showdown filled with cold stares and dangerous truths, secretly recording every confession, exposing every hidden crime, and tearing down a criminal network layer by layer while Liana watched him with a mixture of fear and admiration, slowly realizing that the man her mother trusted was not a monster of wealth but a warrior of justice. And when the final arrests were made and the men who hunted her were dragged away in handcuffs, Alex returned home to find Liana sitting on the staircase clutching a small stuffed bear, her last memory of her mother, and when he sat beside her, she whispered, "Are they gone forever?" And he nodded, saying, "As long as I'm alive, no one will touch you." And in that powerful moment, she rested her head against his arm for the first time, allowing her walls to fall, and Alex felt something inside him heal. The loneliness, the guilt, the emptiness, all replaced by the unexpected love of a child who had lost everything yet still found hope. The chapter closes with Alex preparing breakfast the next morning, burning the toast and laughing awkwardly, while Liana giggles for the first time. And the narrator reminds viewers that family is not always born, it is sometimes found in the darkest, most unexpected moments, and that even the richest man in the world can be poor until he learns what truly matters. The screen fades out with a warm call to action, encouraging viewers to subscribe for more emotional and life-changing stories. Alexander Royce, the billionaire whose name could shake entire markets, walked through the silent marble hallway of his mansion long after midnight, his shoulders heavy from another day of ruthless business battles, wanting nothing more than to collapse into bed. But the moment he approached his bedroom door, he sensed something was wrong, something subtle yet chilling, like the faint sound of papers rustling on the other side, a sound completely out of place in the perfectly secured sanctuary of his private suite. He hesitated, tightened his grip on the gold doorknob, and pushed the door open with a slow, calculating motion, only to feel his heart seize in disbelief as he saw a little girl no older than 8 sitting on the floor, surrounded by stacks of $100 bills pulled straight from his hidden safe. The child wasn't panicked, wasn't attempting to escape, and wasn't even startled by his presence as she looked up at him with wide, intelligent eyes filled with a pain far too deep for someone so young, and whispered, "Please, don't be angry. I didn't mean to do anything wrong." And something in her trembling voice froze Alexander completely, because this wasn't the voice of a thief. This was the voice of someone terrified, someone cornered by life itself, someone who had nowhere else to run. Before Alexander could speak, she hugged a worn photograph to her chest as if it were the last piece of her soul, and said quietly, "My name is Liana. My mother told me that if anything ever happened to her, I must come here to find you." Words so unreal that Alexander staggered backward, for he hadn't heard that name, her mother's name, in nearly a decade. Yet the memory of the woman he once loved came rushing back like a tidal wave, pulling up a past he thought he had buried beneath success, money, and steel-cold solitude. The girl's eyes filled with tears as she added, "Bad men were following us. They hurt her. She said you were the only person who could keep me safe," and then she held out the photograph, her mother standing beside Alexander from years ago, smiling with a softness he had forgotten he once had, and scribbled on the back were the haunting words, "If you're reading this, they found me. Protect our daughter." Alexander's chest tightened with a mix of grief, guilt, anger, and fierce protectiveness he had never felt before, and instead of calling security or demanding explanations, he slowly approached her, knelt so he was eye level with the trembling child, and gently took her tiny hands into his own, saying in a voice he didn't even recognize, "Liana, you're safe now. No one will ever hurt you again." And for the first time since entering his room, the little girl's fragile courage crumbled as she broke into